Okay, so I'm sure all of you know what it's all about here. We're not going to go into details about the factory production stuff. I think let's get straight to it. You probably all know James Pittman, Linda Soros, and I'm going to let them tell you their story. And we've got Matt Cohen down here. We've got Gordon Soros here. If we can let the story just evolve. And thanks for coming. James, take over.
So listen, I don't have any kind of speech plan. So anybody who's got a question, please just like put up your hand and shout it out at me to give me a little bit of direction on where we're going to go. But I think because we've been out there, and that includes you, and if you want to jump in, I think you should come stand next to me here, or at least sit next to me. Obviously, when you do a trip like this, you know, only 50% of the trip is about the aeroplane. In fact, 10% of the trip normally is about the aeroplane. 90% of the trip is about the people. So it's quite a grieving process arriving here in Oshkosh. It's so exciting to be here, see everybody, but it's also quite sad to kind of end an adventure and have to split up from people like Linda and JP, who I'm sure is going to join us, my mate Matt over there. Are you coping, Linda?
What, Matt? What? We call Matt the Bulldog.
You'll hear why just now. So we spent the last basically 10, 11 days falling in love with the new aeroplanes. Back in 2005, there was also the new LSA class in the world. It created an opportunity to get into aviation reasonably cheaply with a minimal of regulatory kind of hassle, less health requirements for the pilots and so on. So we built the LSA aeroplane, designed and built our prototype, brought it of course in 2009 to Oshkosh, flew it around the world. It's become something of a tradition in our business, and we've been building more complex aeroplanes ever since, until Rotax produced the 915 IS engine, and we were able to, from our Sling 4 at that stage, develop a Sling TSI, which uses the more powerful 915 rather than the 114 engine. We made the wing a little bit smaller, changed the aerofoil from a 4415 to a 2414, which is a whole bunch of advantages, and ended up with an aeroplane, the Sling 4 TSI, which we thought was the absolute perfect marriage of airframe and engine. And really, you know, there are people who say an aeroplane is built around an engine. I think the other people that say that the airframe, or that the engine needs to be found for exactly the airframe mission that you need. The Sling 4 TSI is an aeroplane which, in its class, just did for us in South Africa, and I think is now doing for a bunch of Americans exactly what people need in their kind of private, recreational, and in some cases kind of training aviation lifestyle. So when you get a perfect marriage of engine and airframe in a low-wing aeroplane, what do? You build a high wing, exactly. Because there are people who want it, there are missions that it's good for, and we have a business as well. There's a market for these aeroplanes. So it did ultimately take us some time to get exactly the handling qualities that we wanted in the high-wing version, and make it as good as the Sling 4 TSI low-wing. If anybody's interested, I can tell you just now offline, or even now, why some of those changes needed to be made. You can't just take the wing on a low-wing aeroplane and put it on the top and end up with exactly the same aeroplane. It just doesn't quite work like that. So we had to work in it a little bit. Is anybody here that's got an order in for a high wing? Okay, there's a bunch of you. Woo! I have not been to Oshkosh for 3 years now. I've missed the last 2 Oshkoshes. And we've actually taken orders for about 145 high wings. So if your number is quite high, you could be waiting for a while. I felt a little bit embarrassed for a couple of years now, feeling that there are people who maybe don't believe that this aeroplane actually exists at all. So we're delighted to be able to bring 3 of them here to show you, to demonstrate. And we've been focusing, because we have been doing quite a bit of kind of development work up to now, we have been focusing on getting out TSIs and 2s to kind of keep everything turning over. I promise you we are now at the stage, particularly having proved the aeroplanes, bringing them here to Oshkosh, where we are going into production initially at 4 a month and then ramping up to 8 a month. So you can try and work out when your order's going to come. It's not going to take you as long as you feel that it could otherwise have been. Just very, very briefly, because I want to talk a little bit about our adventure more than everything leading up to it, but just very, very briefly, in order to carry the structure in the high-wing aeroplane from the weight to the wing, it didn't make sense for us to continue to use aluminium only as our primary structural component in the aeroplanes that we build at Sling. And so we took the kind of brave step of going with a composite approach from the rear of the firewall to the kind of rear bulkhead in the aeroplane. That's a mixture of carbon and glass now, so that we could essentially create very strong structures through the pillars in the front and the rear pillar behind the main window in the door, but with very narrow, so less weight and also less volume. We don't need to build as big a kind of a box section there. And it took us some time to get that right, but we think that we've got that, or we know actually that we've got that absolutely down now. These aeroplanes have currently got a maximum all-up weight of 1,050 kilograms. You're going to have to forgive my metric speak here. I can't do the conversions here in the States as quickly as I'd like to. But, and we may in fact up that over the next couple of months, because we've done sufficient structural testing there at the factory, but we've also proven to ourselves on these flights, we took off, I think, at 1,350 kilograms, didn't we? This is JP Schulzer over here, our first and the aeroplanes performed absolutely beautifully, provided you've got the structural strength. Of course, the only other real element in determining at what weights an aeroplane works properly is, do you kind of have the power available? So I'm not going to talk about the kind of developmental phase, but you can do a whole lot of flying in an aeroplane in the testing phase, and you can spin and you can climb as hard as you can check all those flying characteristics. But I reckon you don't really get to understand how good a tool an aeroplane is going to be for your life until you actually get in that aeroplane and go camping and transporting yourself, take your family, your pets, your luggage, and live in her, for a period of 12, 14 days. And this is actually, I think JP's done a bit of camping in Namibia, but outside of that, this is the first time that I've really lived in the Sling high-wing aeroplane, and I've really fallen in love with it over the last sort of 12 days of flying from South Africa to America. So, are you guys interested in some of the technical kind of content of these long flights that we've done? Yeah. Just how we did it? So, we choose a route, and because we always end up leaving late, we do the kind of quickest route. You draw a line, you start on Google Earth, and you do a great circle from Johannesburg to Oshkosh, and then you look for airports. It's about you can plan a route, essential route from Johannesburg to Oshkosh in about 15 minutes in the modern world with a decent internet connection and Google Earth. You just look for a couple of runways in places that look like they're friendly. So there are not a lot of them in Africa, I can tell you what. It's not so easy. So we chose Luanda in Angola, which is just a little bit right of track. Accra in Ghana, which is a little bit right of track. Cabo Verde, which is probably almost exactly kind of halfway on track between Joburg and Oshkosh by Great Circle. And then a very long 2,100 nautical mile leg from Cabo Verde, across to Barbados. Then Barbados to Bahamas, Florida. Then we just dodged the weather, basically. That stage, JP took over the navigation and air traffic control.
We went nowhere.
And we struggled a little bit. We had a tailwind, essentially between 10 knots and 45 knots, the whole way from Johannesburg to Kentucky, which was basically yesterday. Mostly between 20 and 35 knots. So it's there are not many places you can fly for 7,800 nautical miles. It was a really, really kind of great route. And then we run into some quite serious weather over there. The trip from Cape Verde to Barbados is 2,100 nautical miles. And we reckon that at 130 knots on average, because then the airplanes are really heavy, probably cruising about 124 knots, I would say. When they lighten up, by the end of the day, just in the eco mode with a 915 motor, you're doing about 138, 140 knots. So we said zero wind, 130 knots, 2,100 nautical miles. It's about 15 and a half, 16 hours. So we had endurance for 17 and a half hours, burning 32 liters per hour of gas. So you didn't want to have a headwind. As it turned out, we had a humping tailwind. We never had an opportunity where we live in Johannesburg in South Africa, which is at high altitude. The altitude's 5,300 feet at our airfield. But on any given day, the density altitude's in the vicinity of 7,000 to 8,000 feet. So we didn't really get a chance to test out how the aeroplanes would fly, quite heavily overladen. And we actually did our first, when were you full of gas, JP, for the first time?
On Syria.
No, you weren't actually full of it on Syria, were you? Okay, so some of the teammates were doing a bit of organising behind the scenes there, I see.
Trying to save on gas.
So gas is a lot cheaper in Johannesburg, and if you JP's age, you've got to spend as little as you can. So we literally didn't know. The computer said that the aeroplane would take off and fly with 560 litres of gas in her, which is essentially 1,300 kilograms, I think. In the case of JP's aeroplane, 1,350 in the case of Linda's aeroplane, because it's got a lot of instrumentation and a parachute in it. So we set off with our hearts in our mouths, and they performed absolutely beautifully. From then onwards, actually, essentially, we refilled to the brim with fuel every single time until we got to the Bahamas, because we never knew where the kind of next load of gas would come from. And certainly for me, as we went, I became more and more confident and fell more and more in love with this aeroplane. I felt like I really got to know her as we went. I am actually historically somebody who loves low-wing aeroplanes. I've just become so kind of comfortable in them. Quite often, depending what you're doing, you actually see as well or better out of a low-wing aeroplane. You don't see as well if you want to shoot film, and you don't see as well if you want to look straight down the side. But when you're turning towards something, obviously in a low-wing aeroplane, the wing drops away. Some of the indisputable benefits of a high-wing aeroplane are that there's shade to sit in when you land. And I'll tell you, when you're trying to organize fuel from airports in capital cities of Africa, where there is simply no avgas and nobody will let you bring no gas onto the runway, shade is at a really high premium. But the other reason is that it's easy to get in and out of. And I chose to do this journey of mine with a really, really close mate of mine, Matt Cohen over there, sitting in the chair. It is kind of going to be interesting to know just how much hard work it would be to do a trip with a guy who doesn't have the use of his legs. I can tell you what, if we had some guy with the use of his legs, this trip would have been a shitload harder than it was. And the reason why it would have been harder is because the most powerful human on this journey of ours, without a shadow of a doubt, was Matt the Bulldog Cohen over there. Because really, what the difficulty is not the flying, and I'll tell you a little bit about his flying just now, but the real difficulty is managing people in the places that you land along the way. So we landed in Luanda, and what happened with the fuel in Luanda? That was quite easy. Okay, fuel in Luanda was easy. We landed in Accra, Ghana, no fuel. And it took us essentially 2 days to get our airplanes full with avgas of uncertain origin in many years. We landed the following day in Cabo Verde. 5 of us, the other 5, got into our handler's vehicle and went straight to the hotel. Matt got straight into the vehicle of a friend of the handler and started his search the minute we arrived. After an 11-hour flight, started his search for gas for us. It took him ultimately about 17 hours. He got the gas next day, lunchtime, worked through the night, and we spent 9 hours refueling the aeroplanes in Cape Verde, absolutely exhausting. And so he actually made, through contributions right along the way, the greatest contribution, I think, of anyone. It was quite a lesson for us. And our team was not entirely without its kind of frustrations along the way, but as the journey progressed, we did in many ways become a more and more tight unit. Matt is a licensed PPL pilot. He is what we call a Foxbat in South Africa. It's called an A-22 Czechoslovakian built little aircraft, which we modified for him to fly hands only, and which he flies in Johannesburg, South Africa. And in the last 24 hours before we left to Johannesburg, we actually modified the SHW. You might have seen the hands-only control mechanism, and that one is far from perfect, but the aeroplane is designed because he only has the rudder on the hand over here, but it's right close to the throttle and brake. And so Matt is able to fly the aeroplane completely alone, but it's not the ideal setup. In the next 2 weeks after we get home, we will rejig that setup so that the throttle and brake are on the right hand as well. So the aeroplane can be really effectively used as a hands-only flying aircraft. And I can pay testament to the fact that it works really well. I'd love to make it available to people who want to be able to fly hands-only, kind of going forward from here. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be here at Oshkosh in one piece, safe and sound, before the end of the show. I could keep talking absolutely forever. I'm going to hand over a little bit just to my colleagues over here to say a little bit about their experiences of this journey. What I do want to say is thank you to my colleagues, actually. Linda will tell you about her history, I think, with the Sling highway. Linda, after the Bulldog, is the person in the world who can organize more in a short period of time than absolutely anybody else. And in honor to her organizational capabilities, with just a cell phone in her left hand, she became known in the second half of the trip as the Poodle. So, the Bulldog goes, ooh, ooh. The Poodle goes, yop, 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 yop. And she arranged, will you tell everybody about getting pilots in to kind of get us from Bahamas across to America maybe? We needed to make some sort of small changes to arrangements late in the trip, which Linda organized kind of in the snap of a finger right at the end. Thank you, Linda, for your incredible contribution. JP, for showing us the way, flying our tail dragger here in difficult circumstances sometimes. It was very sad to lose Mike Blythe, the designer of all of the Sling range of aircraft, essentially. Couldn't get an American visa renewal in 4 months because your country's so popular. We had to drop it in the Bahamas. Matt, thanks for putting up with me, but thanks, guys.
Thank you, James. And thank you for your leadership in dealing. James was at it every night, making posts for the AVCOM, is that what it's called? South African
blog.
And filing flight plans and dealing with a lot of stuff. I'm getting a lot of credit that I don't deserve because I feel I just was along for the ride, but he did a lot of the hard work too, as well as JP helping. I'm an airline pilot. I haven't flown VFR in almost 20 years, so I'm like, what? So they help me make it through successfully. So I'll just tell you a little bit about why the high wing from my perspective, and I'll start there and tell you a little bit about my factory build and then the journey. So I had a Cessna T210 for about 20 years, loved the plane, fell in love with the platform, originally focused on the 210 because I had an elderly buddy that I wanted to be able to get in and fly it, and because of its capabilities. It could haul a lot, it could go high, it could go fast. It was a great plane, served my mission very well. Then I shifted careers and became an airline pilot, found I wasn't using it enough. So about close to 20 years ago, I decided I would sell it and start my search for the replacement for when I was getting near to retirement at the airlines. And unless they change the age, that's under 4 years for me, and I'll be 65. So they're going to take my keys to the Airbus away. So sad. So I've been actively searching, and there are a few planes that I thought for about 7 years. Okay, this is the one I'm going to get, or this one. And I do have, having been a 210 owner, inspired me to get my airframe and power plant mechanics license because it was a real maintenance challenge, and I didn't know anything about it. So I figured if I wasn't going to do my own maintenance, at least I wasn't going to get ripped off anymore. So so having a licensed A&P, so I certainly, and I like working on airplanes, I discovered, but so I wasn't limited to experimental, and 20 years ago, it didn't look like there was much of an experimental on it. So I was looking for anything that would fit my bill. I knew I wanted a high wing platform because it's solid and stable, and it's easy to get in and out of, and you get your friends with bad knees. My sister's disabled. You know, there are various people I want to stuff in there. But also I loved, what I fell in love with the platform is the ability to look down. I fly IFR, I like having an umbrella when I get out. And I think I'm sorry, I think it's a little uncivilized to have to step on your seat to get into your airplane, but especially if you got muddy shoes. And I like looking down, that's why I go up, you know, so I like, there's everything I like about that platform. And its stability is helpful because, I hope you don't mind me saying, my husband get a little airsick, so it's nice to have a nice, stable pendulum stability platform. So for a variety of reasons, it had to be a high wing. After 20 years of Continental engine ownership, I knew I wanted a modern engine. I knew I didn't want another. And I wanted modern avionics. I wanted a new airplane. Mine was a 1979, and I had it maintained either at the best shops and or by myself. And it's a 1979 aircraft, so I knew I wanted a new one. I wanted it to be able to haul 4 good, reasonably sized adults, toys, things to play with, and go reasonably fast. I don't need a 300 knot aircraft in my retirement. I've been doing that, low and slow. But I wanted a reasonably fast aircraft that would haul a good load and have a great range. So I had this criteria, and I was slapping all kinds of aircraft in both, like I said, the certified and experimental world up against this, and nothing was sticking. I visited factories, I test flew airplanes, still nothing. I wasn't willing to compromise, and I just figured, by the time I retire, somebody's going to make my airplane. I have faith. Somebody's going to do it. And I had discovered Sling at Sun and Fun through friends of a friend, and had flown them and gotten to know the Sling folks. Loved the airplane, loved the way that it handled and the quality and how solid and sturdy it was. I loved the design aspect with the engine and making an airframe that would sit in a cowling that was appropriate. But it was a low wing, so it was not even really an option from my perspective. And so in early 2019, when I heard the rumor that they were coming out with a high wing, I was trying to stuff money in their hands, which is why I was the #1 production customer. Because I recognized the plane the instant I knew Sling was going to make a high wing. I knew it was going to handle beautifully because that's what they do, right? I knew it was going to be capable because that's what they do. I knew it was going to be strong because that's what they do. So knowing nothing other than that they were thinking about it, I was on board 100%. And now, here we are, and I made the best decision ever. Oh. It worked out great. And then I made the decision to do it, and I thought about what my options were. I was going to build it. I have the great good fortune of having a home in Naples, and I was inspired to get this home in part because I met Bob and Joan Zaleski, who happened to be the first builders of a two-place sling in the United States. But when I was looking around for another home, I looked at the EAA chapter, I found them, I called them, they took me to lunch, I fell in love with them and how active the chapter was. And one of the things that after I bought there, and because they would do the Young Eagles every month, not, other places it was an annual affair, but this is monthly. And these were just a lot of great GA people who were giving their heart and they were giving back to the community and having a lot of fun together. Every Thursday they have the old parts fly out somewhere, and hundreds of people go. So it was because it was a good solid GA community that I decided to buy there from them. Then they started a program called the Naples Youth Aviation Project, where 17 middle and high school kids, starting at 10 to 17, I think at the time, now they're probably 18 or built a two-place sling, which is flying now. So come to the Sling Day, meet Bob and Joan and some of the folks involved with the project. It's amazing. They wanted to keep it alive for the kids because once a month, they'd come, they'd fly, they'd be excited, but then they'd leave. So they said, what can we do that will keep this more alive? And we've had a wonderful time. I've seen these kids grow in every way, from teamwork, leadership, knowledge. They know what they want to do with their lives now. Some of them had no idea before. And we had the good fortune, one of the ways that he was referring to helping out was when we were making that last leg, or the leg from NASA to Florida because of some visa issues. JP couldn't fly his own plane, so we had to find some folks to help out. And I called on our NIAP, one of our NIAP kids who was involved in the project, and he came and helped us get the 3 planes across, as well as another buddy of mine that's an airline pilot, it's tail time. So it worked out great, and was able to promote that, so check it out, NIAP, NapleSYouthAviationProject.org, and make a donation.
Sold by Linda.
Yeah, they're going to sell, we're going to sell this one, and the proceeds will buy the next kit. They said, kids, what do you want? You can do anything, but I think they chose another sling to do for the next project.
Good.
And then the overage will go for scholarships for the kids. So that's just a little sidebar. Then the idea of how to get it across, so I got the plane, and then I was, where am I going to build it? I won't bore you with the details. I thought I was going to do it in Florida. I was looking at Torrance. I was talking to Doug Goodrich up in New York because it's more proximate for me if I wanted to get it quicker. I started to get anxious. I'm like, I don't think I want to spend that many years. I want to do it with some help and make it quick. And Doug who was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you build the first production sling highway. But he very honestly said, you know what, if you want to get it done in a short period of time, it's the first of its kind, maybe you should go to the factory if you can do that. And I'm like, well, sure, I can do that. That's a great idea. So I went to the factory. Their team is spectacular. And it was really such an honor. I think you referred to mine as a production prototype at one event.
Yes.
So it was, I just can't tell you, it was just an incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a part of the process of helping with the development, the design, and I kept my home builders in mind. Like every time there was something that might have been happening, I'm like, well, now is this something that the kit builder's going to have to do, and how are they going to do this, and so on and so forth. So it was just really, really terrific. And then JP joined us, and there were some things that I wanted, and it's like, that's nice, it's an experiment, you do what you want, And then JP was in the same boat, he backed me up or had the same ideas. It's like, 100% of our Sling customers want this feature, maybe we ought to do it. So I think I can honestly say it's a better product thanks to JP and I's input.
Absolutely.
And so it's just really, really terrific. It's got a tremendous team in the lead up to get everything ready to go. All the engineers, who wrenches on their own airplanes, right? Who has ever cursed under their breath the engineer that made the thing that you couldn't get to, right? So yeah, so this was terrific because these were the designers and the draftsmen and the people who were putting it together were working it and wrenching and everybody was in the factory and everybody was pulling together. It's just, I look at literally goosebumps. I mean, it's really an incredible team. You guys
You have goosebumps.
I do, I'm telling you, yeah, it's really serious. Get emotional. But yeah, no, it was just absolutely terrific. And then when the idea of flying it across, I said, do you mind if we fly your plane to Oshkosh? I said, as long as I get to fly it, sure, yeah, why not, you know? And so, and then thanks to the great relationships that Sling in the U.S. has been able to put together with the FAA over here, we were able to get the FAA to come over for our two planes to register it. So there's a lot of pieces to it. The part of the team that I was so excited because Jean kept telling me yesterday that he had a little surprise for me and not to go away and not to go away. And there's a gentleman that is just so integral to the Sling development team, a test pilot extraordinaire, mechanic extraordinaire, etc., just wouldn't happen without him. And a buddy of his came by the booth and said, oh, you know Sean? I'm like, yeah. So I'm running around saying, oh, let's get a selfie. And I want to write a note that says, hi, Sean, miss you, love you, couldn't do without you. And so I'm looking all over for a Koki, as they call it, a marker in our world. Oh, I gotta write this note to Sean, and we're gonna take a selfie with his friend. And everybody's laughing at me, and I don't know why. And so I use a pen and I say, hi, Sean, we take a picture. And I said, tag him, let him know we couldn't do it without him. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, Sean showed up. The way this went, I can only hope one day I can fly my plane the way he flies my plane. I mean, he just straps it on and he becomes the bird that I want to be, you know? And his intimacy with the aircraft and the mechanics of it is just, bar none, and better keep them happy because God only knows what you do with them. But anyway, that's good. So then the journey was spectacular. Like I said, I felt, a lot of other people were doing the heavy lifting. I don't know why nobody told me how much fun formation flying was because I didn't really appreciate that before. It was one thing.
8,000 miles of it.
And what's interesting is that, you might think this is a great journey to do by yourself, but it's like so much, I just can't, it's hard to put into words how extraordinary it is to be flying with a machine that you love and you're growing to know, with two other ones right next to you, the photos, it's just an absolute thrill. And then, as like icing on the cake, I had the great good fortune of flying most of the way with Mike Blight himself, right? Mike Blight, the designer, so he's getting to know his baby, and I'm getting to know his baby, and he's trapped for 16 hours next to me. Asking all these questions. Poor guy couldn't get to sleep. So it was just, to learn the capabilities of the plane after, 20 years of flying jets, it's just absolutely spectacular. And the people that we flew with, it's just terrific. It's been an absolute honor to get to know JP. He's always going to get up here and talk. You're going to love him. He's got, I'm sure he won't promote himself. So Candoris, check out his site. And JP's just a pilot extraordinaire. And he flew the TDR like constantly and really got TDR as the prototype tail wheel. Really got to know that plane so well, and it's a beautiful thing to watch it fly. It's art in motion, really it is. So it was interesting. There was a lot of different characters, and you've heard all about Matt already, and then JP's friend William, who kept and helped to document a lot of this stuff. Any one of the pieces missing this would not have been what it was. So So very grateful to have had the opportunity. I love my airplane. I am amazed. I'm amazed with the avionics, which I got Midwest to do for me. I knew I wanted the plane, but I had no clue how far avionics and things had come in the 20 years I was gone. There's, in many ways, it's much more sophisticated than my Airbus. And it's even got like flight control laws and stuff like that, so that's just like icing on the cake. But then it goes on. Its capabilities and its performance has been absolutely spectacular. Okay, thank you so much. I don't know if there's any.
Hello. I'm so exhausted. I'm trying to muster the very last bit of energy I have, but I've always considered myself an adventurer, and I think the main reason is when you go on a real adventure, it's never easy, and the adventure itself becomes a bit of a billboard for what you're made of. Your vices and virtues are on full display, and I've been able to, or at least I hope, improve as a human being continuously throughout my life because of adventures, and this one was no different. I've felt a lot of self-praise and pride throughout it for my decision making a lot of the time, and emotional maturity, which I flew around the world 6 years ago in a 210, and emotional maturity was the one thing I left at home. So I still had a few slips, throughout this, but I think we gotta go easy on everybody because of the sheer pressure and pace of everything, and I'm walking away with having learned a lot of great memories, lifetime friends, and the flight was the easy part because I built my airplane in 4 months, and I started out not doing a factory assist, so I built every aluminum piece on that airplane alone at night in James's hangar, drinking a lot of whiskey, and luckily there's a lot of good music, and it was a great experience. And towards the end, when we committed to Oshkosh, the pressure was on, and I was nervous because I don't like doing things in a hurry. I like taking my time. I like doing things properly. But I got my word from Sling, and especially from Sean, that they'll make sure that whatever I don't work on will be done right. So about a quarter of the airplane is done right. But yeah, it was the people was a big part of this adventure and this trip. You guys are only seeing the very sort of tip of Sling. There's a huge iceberg in South Africa, and even here, a team of phenomenal human beings, like genuinely empathetic, driven, kind. It's a company full of dreamers, and I'm a dreamer, so I felt like I found my people, and I was able to build this airplane at a pace that I don't think you really can otherwise. And there were many nights when I was working late in the hangar, and Sean would come over with a beer and he'd have a little look, and they wouldn't say much, but if he left his blue torque seal on a nut, then I knew it was good. And towards the end, he actually gave me a tube of blue torque seal. So if there was ever anything that's flattering, it's getting a tube of blue torque seal. So at Sling, every inspector has their own color, so that's why it's probably a bit more of an inside joke. But it was a phenomenal experience. I'm going to carry on around the world. I now own my dream airplane, which for me, airplanes are tools for adventure. They're not status symbols. They're not anything. They're a platform to go places, to make memories, to see things that you wouldn't normally be able to see, and to fly. Because I love flying. There's just nothing else that speaks to my inner code, I guess, the way that flying does. But yeah, there's, we are the sort of first two customers. We spend a lot of time in these airplanes, which I've always admired about Sling. I can't see any other company that bring a new airplane to market spend this much time in them. And I can promise you that it's already the greatest. I've been PIC in 128 airplanes in my life. This is the best airplane. And I'm not getting paid or anything to say that. It is genuinely the best airplane I've ever flown. Its ability to carry weight, its ability to land short, its fuel economy, the ergonomics, the space. It's a big airplane. It's almost unfair to call it a Sling 4 high wing because it's a whole new level. Like they've kicked up the pace and the standard is phenomenally high. So yeah, there's a lot more that I could talk about. But I'm very grateful to be here. I'm extremely grateful to be in this position in my life at my age. It's not lost on me. And yeah, I'm grateful for all of you for the adventure and the stories.
We're planning our next.
Any questions?
Matt, did you want to say something?
Bulldog, you want to say some words?
Let's discuss some questions. Any questions for any of them? Nothing. Oh, that was a boring talk.
Hey,
Go through it.
For the 2,100 mile leg, do you have to use glider tanks or?
Yeah, well, we put in, and according to my ethos, it was 24, but we'll talk about that. They made tanks for the inside. We should probably get a set to put up, but we don't have that. That's cute. Do we have some of the pictures of the bladder tanks? There you go. So there were 2 tanks in the back, 320 liters total. The tanks met, and thanks, one of my fingerprints is that when we put the fuel system in, we designed and installed a permanent ferry tank. So it should be an option, I would think. And so that this has a header tank. It's gravity feed to a header tank. And so the fuel comes from the 2 ferry tanks. They have 2 pumps, so you have a backup straight into the header tank, so we don't have to go to the main tanks. And then from the header tank into the engine, so we have a feed on one side and a return on the other. The system worked great. A little breather out the back, and we were good to go. So we just had to fuel up inside the plane, which was a variety of well done and sloppy. So sometimes we had to air the plane out a little bit, but yeah, it worked out great.
I mean, we're Africans, so we need a bit of endurance and independence. And so, as a standard in the aircraft, the standard tanks are 99 liters each, 2 times 99, 198 liters. And as a standard option, you can put another 25 liter tank on the outside in each wing.
Both of us did it.
Yeah, which all 3 of these airplanes have that anyway. Our factory airplanes always put that in. What we did for this trip, and we've done a lot of these trips, is you put these extra tanks in the back, which are 320 liters. And we got that quite kind of perfect. It's not a difficult thing to do.
What is your total fuel capacity?
So 560 liters, 570 liters actually. We always work on 560 though, in case we haven't got them quite topped up. At times 0.7, so that's about, because 6 sevens are 42, so 420 kilograms of fuel. A TSI empty weighs about 500 or something, doesn't it? So almost as much weight in gas as a Sling 4 TSI. And that gives you like 17,500 endurance. But those little engines are potent, man, they're powerful. The thing takes off 1,350 kilograms.
So I know James is speaking South African liters, just for that. The liters converted 150 gallons.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot of gas. Cecil, you want to ask something?
Yeah, Yeah, can Sean talk about the flight test program?
Sure. Come on.
Hi everybody. Yeah, this was a very interesting project because when they started off a couple of weeks ago, they said we were all going to Oshkosh. I was probably the person that thought it was going to least happen. But anyway, many late nights later, I let the engineers carry on to the point where they ran out of ideas. And aeroplane instincts kicked in, and I got the 3 airplanes ready to fly. I then spent a lot of time getting them sorted out, testing the systems, setting up the instruments, and yeah, I was surprised when by arriving here at Oshkosh, I wanted to make sure my 3 angels arrived here safely, and they are, and they were great.
What I meant to say is a lot of people think, oh, you're so brave and, blah, blah, blah. And, weren't you scared? And I'm like, no, Sean looked over my plane. I know it's good to go. So thank you.
Yeah, I would say it's a passion of mine that's been with me since I was 9 years old, when I first started flying gliders. And one of the biggest things that we need is I work at Sling because I want to work there, and not because I have to work there. Test flying is not a privilege in any way, it's a responsibility. And I deal with it that way, especially as an AP, or as you call it in the States, an AAP. It's very much a responsibility. And I remember Matt coming to me the day before and says, if it's not right, I'm not going. Is it right? I said, I gave him my hand. I said, enjoy the flight. So yeah, it's great. They're in fantastic condition. You know, look at them. And James is going to carry on to Europe with the aeroplane, Linda back home, and ultimately I'll see SHW back in South Africa in about a month or 2.
And I can tell you, it's only going to get back to South Africa because of Sean Russell. I'm quite famous. This is quite a bad thing to admit as an owner of an aircraft business, but I think I'm quite famous for not having done a pre-flight check in 11 years, And the reason I haven't done a pre-flight check in 11 years is because all of our aircraft are flown and maintained by Sean Russell. Sean Russell has I know it's not something to clap about, but he has a daughter who's been flying airplanes very, very competently since she was 12 years old. And the reason why Sean keeps those airplanes so absolutely perfect is because he wants to know that his young daughter is not going to run into any problems as she goes. It's the kind of passion that drives a bunch of our employees in the Sling factory in Johannesburg. Shawnee, when I'm out there over the middle of the ocean, I know it's because of you that I feel so thanks, my man.
Unfortunately, I telling James that story. It is a true story. But it was also my introduction in aircraft repair because as a punishment for that, I had to go and fix that fault. The next 2 years I learned how to do wooden fabric and covering an aeroplane and repaint it. And I carried on to complete my glider pilot's license then and obtained it at the age of 14. So,
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the things that go on at the Sling factory are incredible. Anyone else with some questions? Yes?
Is it difficult to get an unregistered plane made in South Africa? Is that a challenge for the FAA?
Challenge, but it can be done. That was done. Yeah. So I mean, if we had to do it again, it'd probably be smoothened out. Eventually we got the cooperation of the Mido down in LA, and it took a little bit of. There was no regulation saying it can't be done, but they were trying to find one that said it can't be done. And in fact, we put off. The DAR was meant to go over for this normal inspection, like we would do it here, but the location on the paperwork said Johannesburg, South Africa, and it was put off. They put off, but eventually, basically, it's doable. It's quite doable. Yeah.
I mean, we'd love you guys to kind of push the system a little bit because it's close to us. It's kind of cheap and easy to live in South Africa. The weather's good. It's quite a fun thing to do. I think it's kind of a bit of a holiday thing to do, particularly if you're retired or something. You got the time to do it. We have also had a couple of English people G registration airplanes built in South Africa. We love to do it. Airplanes, paperwork, authorities, can be a very painful process. But it looks like we can get the South Africans on side if you guys can get the Americans on side, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely can happen. Who wants to put an order in for a very quick one?
Sean, the real question is, where do we sign up to get our own high-wing airplane?
So interesting, Keith over there with his lovely lady Amira, they're building their Sling TSI in his living room, in his house, in the Virgin Islands. So I've got some nice pictures if you come to the site, I'll show you later, of his drinking a beer, building an airplane with the Virgin Islands down in the background. It's beautiful. Yeah, anyone else have questions on the trip? Any questions? Okay. Gordon, would you like to say something about the building in South Africa?
Everything's been said, really. I'm not a pilot, I'm not a mechanic. Linda usually takes the tools out of my hand so I don't hurt myself. But it was a lot of fun. I actually did work on the plane up front, dimpling and riveting and so forth. Mostly I was taking pictures of what Linda was doing so we could document everything for the FAA. It was a great time. People in South Africa are wonderful. Sling is wonderful. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you.
Putting up the Linda and Jamie.
Yeah.
Probably one of the hardest jobs on the planet is being my spouse. So thank you, honey, for what you do.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well done, Gordon. Bulldog.
Yeah, just an amazing trip with great people and a lot of effort from the guys at home, especially Sean. Like he said, it was, I'm not going in this plane is ticked off by Sean, James, so make sure Sean says it's okay. Sean said it was good and it was just fun from there.
So, Bulldog's girlfriend is sitting over there, Jessica, and she was planning a surprise visit over for Matt. And the last few days while she was traveling, she wasn't able to speak to him. And then while she was at Oshkosh waiting for him, he said, like, why don't you talk to me? Why haven't you been answering your phone? Oh, is that why your phone's flat? What's going on? I think he thought something was up. But anyway, it was a great surprise to get out the airplane off the trip and see Jessica. Yeah. Also, I know we've got a bit of time. Anyone building, ordering, or owning an airplane that wants to bring something up that's would be a nice place to talk about it.
Remember, you're among Sling enthusiasts here, so careful what you say.
Yes.
During the build, how committed are you to staying either nose wheel or tail wheel?
So on the high-wing aeroplane, as things stand at the moment, you do need to choose before you get the rear fuselage has some different pieces, but they go in retrospectively. The center fuselage, right now, our test tail dragger has got a slot for nose wheel and for tail wheel, but we've actually decided, for the sake of lightness, in principle, to do the one or the other. It is an experimental aeroplane. Sean maybe answer better, but if you particularly wanted one that could go either way, we could actually lay in the...
There's only one mold, ultimately.
There's one mold for the outside shape, is what we lay on in the inside. So the concept of having an aeroplane that could be changed kind of at will, or decided really late, is something we'd have to kind of help on with what we could get.
Yeah, it's not wake up in the morning, I should go tell Greg or nose wheel.
Hey, John, talk about the wing ding tonight. When and where?
Oh, right, well, we still, yeah. So the sling ding,
Yeah.
not the wing ding. The wing ding is the front, the dent on the front of the ding. So, yeah, all of you know about the sling ding. It's this evening, it's 7 o'clock, and it's on the way out, if you go out, that way up the road. Have we got a few of these? But if you want to go to sling ding, 5 o'clock, what did I say? 7 o'clock. That's 5 o'clock, yeah. Thanks for the correction. So 5 o'clock, there are a few of these on the site, on our stand. Just come and grab them and have a look. Come and join us. There's free beer and eat food, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the trip. And it's all the Sling owners, so there'll be a lot of Sling talk there and a lot of fun. Come grab one of these. It's got the map and everything on it.
Can I just add something too? In all my talk about being in South Africa and the trip, I neglected to give my appreciation to Sling US and all that they put up, and Sean and Barry and everybody in that, and the great work that they did helping make everything work, and this happening for me, because, you know, I'm actually his customer. And I just want to say thank you very much for all you guys do too.
Sure, pleasure. Thank you. So how this all started was when you know, a new model comes out, you hear about it, everyone starts, well, want to order it. And Linda had spoken to Barry and asked him, I'll take my money, I want you to order the airplane. And of course Barry he couldn't get it out of us or from the factory when we're actually going to get this. And Barry's a great guy. He doesn't want to take someone's money if he can't actually say, I'm going to deliver you an airplane. And at Oshkosh, at the Sun and Fun 2 years ago, this lady came up to me and said, I want to give you money, I want to give you money. Oh, I want to give you money. And she was wasn't very poodlish, she's quite bulldogish actually. Yes. And every time I went around the corner somewhere at Sun and Fun, yeah, she was again. And eventually I realized, okay, she wants to give us money because she wants the first airplane. And I knew the only way we were going to make sure she gets the first airplane is we call James's brother, who's the general manager and CEO of the factory in South Africa. We got him on WhatsApp. We still grabbed a little corner somewhere in one of the forum buildings. And we got hold of Andrew and we spoke through her order. And I said, Andrew, this is officially, this isn't no paperwork, I mean, this is officially it. We get the deposit in, Linda is getting the first airplane. Is that okay? He said, yes. And that was kind of, again, you pushed it. You made it happen, you know. I let it happen, but you made it happen. And that was great that it went through, and you know, the whole process has been exciting. And you really have been part of making it. You and JP, James, I'm going to do it. You and JP really have made the airplane what it is. I think you added your essence to the whole project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How did JP get the second one? That's what I'm
He knows people in high places.
Yeah, I mean, we started getting quite a long kind of list of people who wanted a Sling, and JP, we're very honest people, you know, we treat everybody equally, nobody's more equal than anyone else, but JP is a special case because he has something, you know, very much the same kind of spirit of adventure as we do. He has quite a global reach and understanding and knowledge, so he's a really good guy to give feedback on aviation. He's wonderful marketing for us, just because people know him and love him around the world. But he is a Namibian, actually. He's not a New Zealander, he's not an American, he's a Namibian. And that's right next door to us. And, you know, we wanted somebody who was going to take that airplane in a tail dragger format and really test it and use it, and was able to understand the kind of aerodynamic consequences, structural consequences of what we were doing and give us feedback. So, I mean, I can't believe how lucky as a business we've been in almost every single respect since we started. You know, back in 2005, when Mike and I were here flying around the world in 2009, and we've met an incredible kind of group of people. I'd love to talk a little bit tonight about how much we have our American distributors to thank for our success as a business. You know, America is more than 50% of our business, kind of now. One of the elements of a business is that you meet wonderful people along the way, and we are incredibly lucky to have people like Linda and JP Schulze and a kind of community which has become quite strong. I am delighted. You know, I started out life as a lawyer. You know, and even if you start out as a decent person as a lawyer, it doesn't take too many years before you trawl in the depths. And I managed to kind of get out. And one of the lovely things about aviation is it's just a really cool bunch of people who are all romantics by definition, because it's the romantic spirit that makes you want to fly. And so you meet those people. JP just fits the bill 100%. And he's going to keep giving us feedback. How long to fly around the world, JP? I want to hear, this is okay, I want to hear a public prediction, because I'm sure it's not going to be right. More than 2 years or less than 2 years? Less than 2 years, okay. I've got $100 in it, and it takes more.
A pair of underpants.
What's that?
A pair of underpants.
Matt, I left to start this trip with 5 pairs of underpants. I lost my first pair of underpants when I shared a room with Matt, and he said, the amount of holes in those underpants, there's no point in wearing the bloody thing. Made me throw them in the rubbish bin. The second pair I lost, because he bet me a pair of underpants. I can't remember what that bet was, but I lost it. So he's up 1 pair of underpants, I'm down. I've got 3 left. JP's going light and fast around the world. Pair of underalls. Okay.
You might only have 2 left. So, yeah.
First of all, Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Home Builders in Review. Going to have the high wings out there, and they're going to be out walking around the airplanes and talking and everything. So you're welcome to come out there. The Saturday forum at 11:30, we're actually going to let people come in. We're going to cancel it for them and send them out there. The next thing is, I wanted to see if Sean would volunteer to be back at the Sling Island maybe at 2 p.m. today. So if anyone would come out and have him walk around the airplane and then just show them all the neat parts about the airplane. You volunteer to do that? Anybody like to do that? Yeah. Okay. So be out there today at 2, and you'll get a hands-on presentation from the guy who knows every secret rivet in that airplane. So I guess that's about it for the...
How much time have we got?
We got 10 more minutes, so if any of you have any other questions, you can kind of come up.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, JP.
Last question from over here.
Can you describe what the process would be like to build in Africa? How many times to travel there? And kind of those logistics of how the...
So I did it, I don't think that I'm your typical factory assist customer at all, because I wanted to be there for each and every piece of it. So we went out, my husband and I went out from November till this time, 5 times. We went 6 times total. I went and flew the prototype just before Oshkosh, so anybody who's here at Oshkosh, they didn't have the high wing, they had me going around. Pretending to be the high wing, since I was the only one who'd flown it at that point. So then November I started in earnest, but I'm still working, and so I would go there for somewhere between 2 weeks to a month each time, and then come back and work and fly and then return and go back and forth. So, but I think if they were to let everybody do it the way I did it, they'd have to charge a lot more because I really sucked up a lot of resources. So I don't know what your typical factory build looks like.
I don't really know what they roll out there, to be honest. Yeah, you know, the people who want to build 51%, the people who want to build 5%. It depends on the kind of resources you have to go backwards and forwards. But in the factory, from the start of the process to the end, it generally takes us 12 weeks to build an aeroplane from day one. So if you want to work through a process that's not dissimilar, you're going to build in 12 weeks, I would say. But we'll build as much as you want us to build. You can come back for 2 days, 10 times.
So yes, just to kind of go over that again, the way that, in terms of the build centers, you need us to do 51% of the task. So that is not 51% of the work. So if you were to do that over in South Africa, you could do it in various stages of work like that, various periods of work, or what works very well is like 1 2-week go for 2 weeks. Do that, you cover all the tasks, and then disappear, go do your safari or whatever, then come back a couple of months later when it's all painted and ready to go and be part of the test flying if you like.
You could do it all in 2 weeks. You could do it all in about 2 weeks.
Wayne, chat about yours. Wayne did the real kind of 2 week thing.
So I did the required, like John said, 51% doesn't mean 51% of the work. So, for example, in a quick build kit, how many thousand rivets are there?
About 15,000.
About 15,000 rivets. So the FAA doesn't give you extra points for pulling rivets because, you know, whether you pull 100 rivets or 5,000 rivets,
Pull the rivets.
yeah. So for example, on a quick build, or if you're doing 51%, most of the wing is well, you know, pretty much all of the wing is built. All you're going to be building is flaps, ailerons, attaching a wingtip, and attaching a tank. And all of those things you can do in just a few days. And that's just one example. And the bulk of the fuselage is already built. You know, you're building empennage, you know, landing gear. So you can do all of that in about 2 weeks. So I did it all, I documented it, videoed it all, and yeah, we did it in, I think, less than 2 weeks.
At the factory, but
Yeah.
you can also do it in Torrance or the other build centers.
Yeah, the 4 build centers around the US. So, well, that kind of wraps it up. Any other questions? Come to the booth. Come talk. Come see.
Sling.
And the Sling.